All right, welcome back to Bad MMA Math. We made it. We're finally back to the fights. It's actually been so long since we've had an actual fight around here that I forgot that that's what we actually do around here. You know, that's been our bread and butter. So, if you're here, new, kindly smash and like that button and subscribe. It's really, really appreciated. For those of you who are new as well, just so you know, last year, we did an entire breakdown of every single card from top to bottom and ended the year with a 69% percentage, which, believe me, you're not going to get better anywhere else. So, apparently this is the place to be to make money. Now, when looking at this card, I actually fobbed it off as a bit of a lazy, nothing card, to be honest. I've had a look through the whole thing, though, since then, and now that it's actually been complete, there's a few sleepers on here that I think might be stonk in value and might potentially be explosive as well. So it's nice to get both those things for a change. We're going to get straight into this then. Forgiveness. I want to ask for forgiveness in advance. This is going to be the first time I'm doing like a screen sharing thing, so it might look a little bit choppy or a bit all over the place. But I'm going to be working on it over the next few weeks, so hopefully I can perfect it. All right, so fight number one. Let's pull this up. All right, so we have a flyweight matchup to start off the first card of the year, and it's a pretty decent one. Well, I say it's a decent one. This one might be a little bit of a mismatch to start the year off. Now, I'm going to start with Bunes. He trains with the Pitbull brothers, which is known to be a pretty high-intensity environment. However, at 35 years old, flyweight is a pretty tricky proposition, especially for an aging fighter. If you can get the fight to the ground, that might be his greatest avenue for success. He does have a pretty accomplished ground game and is more than capable of snatching up a limb if he's given the correct opportunity. Now, his opponent Van, on the other hand, has been on a pretty good run in the UFC. He's coming off 2 wins in a row in the organization, where he was actually the heavy underdog in both. He's very young, very strong for the division, and I just think he's going to bully his opponent in there with his slick boxing and varied boxing style. What I really like about this guy is he's wicked fast. He mixes up his strikes really well, doesn't just headhunt, you know, he really rips to the body, which I'm a big proponent of, and I just think he's going to be totally brutal here. At minus 200, I think these represent really good odds, and I'm actually tempted to lay down Van to get this stopped off in the distance. Now, this matchup basically tells me that the UFC is ready to start investing some development time into this Myanmar fighter to play it safe, take the money line on Van. But if you're feeling a little bit spicy, a stoppage within the distance could potentially boost these odds in a favorable way. All right, so fight number 2. Let's have a good look here. All right. The next one takes place at lightweight between a debutant fighter and one fighter that I've got a really big bone of contention with. Now, before I get into the specifics of this one, I need to disclose this because I might be heavily biased on this one, so I have to say this off the bat. I really want to see Motta get flatlined. I had a parlay on for his card last year when he fought Trey Ogden, and he was the sizable favorite, and I put Ogden on my parlay, so you know what that's like when you make a parlay and you stick an underdog on. It's like a real booster, and Ogden was kicking his ass for the better part of 13 minutes. He had him in a rear naked choke with about 2 minutes to go, and the referee stopped the fight. Now, when I was watching it, I kind of thought the fight was over as well. He was getting absolutely destroyed at this point, and he looked like he was out cold. Now, obviously, on reflection, it was realized that Motta was still in the fight, just about. But the referee, rather than saying, we go to the judges' scorecard or sticking by his decision, because the guy was getting trounced at that point, He goes, my bad, and they call it a no contest. So that gets wiped off my parlay card. I was fuming. So he lost me extra money, and for that, I want to see him get slapped. All right. Yeah, still got a grudge. All right, I don't think I really have to get too technical on this one, though. Motta could easily make featherweight if he laid off the double cheeseburgers or whatever the hell he's eating in his off time. And he doesn't really fight in there with any real intelligence. He's basically a one-trick pony that swings overhand rights and hopes that somebody is dumb enough to just walk into one. Now, Tom Nolan is making his debut, so the level of competition is going to be questionable. However, as we can see from the stats, he's 6 inches taller, he's got a 6-inch reach advantage. So if he stays safe at range and waits for Motta to do something brain dead, which trust me, he is going to do, Nolan can just pick him off at range for 3 rounds, or maybe better yet, catch him coming in and take his head off. So yeah, I'm going to take Nolan for the W here. I think it's pretty straightforward. Motta is trash. All right, next one up. Ugh, oh God. All right. Okay. Right. So we got a matchup at featherweight, and yeah, I'm starting to notice a bit of a theme to start out this card. If I were you, I would think of Weston Wilson as like a dollar store Stephen Thompson. To be honest, that might be even being a little bit generous to the guy. The guy has no heart and is extremely sorry. Now, I don't mean to be too hard on this guy. I know it takes serious balls to get in there in front of millions of people, but he just does not belong at this level. It's another case of the UFC basically paying somebody to be on the end of a nasty highlight reel, you know, that can get us all hyped to start the year at. Gene Silva fights out of the Fighting Nerds, which are a gym that really made waves in 2023. And this is another product coming out of the woodwork to carry that momentum into 2024. He had a really impressive KO against Kevin Valahos on the Contender Series, who he was actually supposed to can for himself, and he ended up just ruining the whole night for everyone. Now, his nickname is Lord Assassin, which is, yeah, it's a bit crap. Clearly a case of broken English he thought made him sound like a boss, when it just makes him sound like an idiot. But yeah, this is dirty matchmaking. Silva's going to beat Wilson up, and the odds reflect that, so I wouldn't even play this. The last thing you want to do is lay minus 800 on Silva, and then Wilson somehow catches him. You know, he's got a nice karate stance. You never know. It is fighting at the end of the day. So yeah, I would avoid that like the plague. All right, so fourth fight on the card. We have another bantamweight fight. Now, I expect this one to actually be the first semi-competitive bout of the cards. The Frenchman's record at 19-3 does look pretty impressive, but if you actually dig through his record a little bit, most of the guys he's been fighting, let's have a little look here. Yeah, we've got Lauren, Pena, Weiss. You know what? Most of the guys he's been fighting are not really UFC caliber, and that's kind of putting it mildly. He did win his last fight, but to be honest, I actually thought he got away with one there against Lauren, who did not get any credit whatsoever for the work he did landing strikes against the fence. If a guy like that can keep you pinned up for long periods, I can only imagine what somebody with the skill set, like somebody like Basharat, who has faced far better competition, is going to do to you. Now, having said that though, the Frenchman is pretty tough, and Basharat is one of those guys that dominates with his style, but he isn't necessarily a finisher. So realistically, I can see him taking Lapilus down for long periods of the fight, and the Frenchman just spending the better part of 15 minutes defending very uncomfortable positions. Probably his bumhole. I kind of like the over 2.5 as well, but I think that Basharat should win this pretty comfortably on the money line, winning every single round. All right, next one up. 5th fight on the card. Yeah, I forgot about this one. I don't really think I need to say too much about this one either. I think Marcus McGhee is an absolute murderer. I think it's obvious here, looking at the way that the fights have been lined up, that the UFC clearly want to start the year off by setting up some banging finishes. They better have some stretchers and ambulances on standby, because some of these fighters are going to get hurt here tonight. Balerios is about as average as it gets, to be honest. McGhee has brutal power in his hands, has an explosive takedown game, and is somebody that you really don't want to give a chance of leaving a limb out either. You know, he's pretty good at snatching up a neck. So yeah, this is a really easy one at minus 280. I'm definitely going to be adding this to my ticket. I think McGhee's going to smash him. I don't think I need to get too technical. Yeah, I planned on showing some footage of several fighters to help with my illustration of some of these points. However, the UFC moves pretty dirty with the copyright strikes. So yeah, I'm not going to play that game. Do yourself a favor though. If you're unsure yourself, just look at the highlights of McGhee's last fights. He might only be 8-1 and 33 years old, which looks like a little bit of a red flag. But he did have a few injuries throughout his career. Things got slowed down for him. And he's somebody who's really ready to be fast-tracked and pretty soon. And I think after this brutal KO he gets on Saturday night, he's going to get just that. All right, fight number 6. We have a welterweight clash between Matthew Semelsburger and Preston Parsons. All right. Yeah, this one should be really, really competitive. Now, when this matchup was actually originally announced, I thought I was going to go with the Jedi. I don't know, like, this guy is just not somebody you want to bet money on, either for or against, because he's so unpredictable. Sometimes he comes in there and looks like an absolute savage, demonstrating really good takedowns and showing some really nice pop on the feet. And just when you think he's turning the corner and you think he's going to make a splash, he goes in there and drops an egg, looks hesitant, and ends up getting chinned. So, Parsons, on the other hand, is somebody who likes to put quite a little bit of pressure on and is more than happy to get into the fire when necessary. He's got quite a lot of heart. It's pretty much a pick and fire at this point. So for the first time this year, I think I'm actually going to take the over. For some reason, you can get really generous odds on a plus 1.5. And quite honestly, I think that's the play to make here. I suspect that Semelsburger is probably going to aim to grab a hold of Parsons at some point, take him down and wear him down, which I think is going to kill the clock. Essentially, I don't feel comfortable picking a winner on either side. If you're someone who's a little bit of a risk taker, based on Matthew's past few performances, it might actually be worth laying down Parsons as a dog. However, I still think the Jedi is pretty good, so I'm personally going to be laying money down on this one to go over 1.5 rounds. That to me is the most logical choice. All right, next fight up. We've got the last fight on the prelims, which is a heavyweight fight between Andre Arlovski and Acosta. All right, I'm just going to say this as well. I don't think Costa is very good. But fortunately for him, he's facing an opponent who is completely washed. I mean, Andre got knocked out by Dontel Mays, and that guy is awful. A prime Arlovski would absolutely beat the brakes off of Acosta, in my opinion. But you should know he's just not that guy anymore. I think they're going to trade with each other. It's going to be a typical heavyweight scrap, and Waldo's going to catch him and probably knock him out. The problem for this one is finding value if you're somebody who likes to make a bet on every single fight in the card. And as I said, I don't think Acosta's that good. So I would be very surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if Arlovski manages to chat his way to a decision, not to win the decision, but to get to the end. banking on like a minus 600 favorite a bit too much of a roller coaster than my heart can take personally. So I'm not going to be part of that. Now, personally, I do think there's a lot of value here. Conventional wisdom will tell you that Waldo should dispatch him easily. He is a decent boxer, but I would not be surprised if he makes a meal out of the whole situation and it ends up going to a decision. And then, like I said, with the way the judges are, I don't want that. If somebody's a minus 600 favorite, I want to be 100% certain in my mind that they're going to flatline somebody, and I'm just not sure with this guy. So yeah, I'd stay clear for that reason. For what it's worth, though, it should be a fun little scrap, and I expect it's going to be fun, and someone's going to get their head knocked off. So tune in for it for that. All right, we are onto the main card now. And the next one is a middleweight scrap between Phil Hawes and Bruno Ferreira. All right, if you look at Hawes' resume, not even his resume, so if you look at this guy physically, you'd think that he was a total monster. He's shredded, he's massive, and his fundamental striking is actually pretty decent. Unfortunately for Philip, he's got the one attribute in MMA that you do not want, a dusty chin. He gets clipped pretty much in every fight, and then instantly turns to a deer on ice skates. So frankly, I'm surprised he's even still around at this point after some of the absolute poundings that he's received. Again, though, it is a great booking because both men are going to throw hands and someone's going to be heading to the emergency room. So again, UFC is going to get what they want, an explosive fight to start the year off. I was actually tempted to take the under 1.5 here, but that does feel a little bit risky, especially when both men are going to be wary of each other's power, and you get significant time in there where they stare at each other and then hesitate to move, which could potentially burn the clock. I especially feel this way because Silva, who's usually a very forward, pressure-heavy fighter, got absolutely flatlined trying to do that against Rudzaboev, which then resulted in getting absolutely chinned to hell. It was the first loss of his career. It was brutal, so he might go in there and brown his pants. Having said that, I am going to take him just because he's less chinny than Hawes, who is more technical, but I just don't trust the guy. The under 2.5 might be the best one to lay on this one because I honestly don't see this one going the distance. One of them is going to get knocked out, but I'm slightly edging Silva here. It's a risky one. This has shootout all over it. It's actually pretty uncharacteristic of me to pick the less skilled fighter, but I just don't trust that chin on Hawes. I don't. All right, next fight on the main card. This one, I like this fight. This is a bantamweight fight. Again, the bantamweights are getting a lot of love on this card, I have to say. And I think this is the most outstanding one of the bunch, obviously. It's between Ricky Simon and Mario Bautista. Now, I was really high on Ricky Simon for a while there. I actually picked him to beat Song Yadong, and yeah, that was bad. He got really schooled. His wrestling's really good, and he's a really good boxer that has reasonably fast hands, but that was a really bad fight for him. Now, on the other hand, Bautista is not a bad wrestler either, and tends to do most of his work at kickboxing range, which if anything makes me a little bit more nervous for him in this one. I think what's pushing my decision here, though, is again, it's the level of competition. And despite Simon coming off a loss, it was against the guy who is proving he belongs in that upper echelon of the division. And he did dominate Jack Shaw in the fight before that, who was 16-0 at the time and was really looking like a good prospect. Mario's looked outstanding in his last 5 bouts. However, they are a few against few of some of the lower level bantamweights in the division. So I think if you're going to bet on this one, I would take this to go over 2.5, as both these men are very durable and hard to finish, but they both favor the wrestling. So usually in situations like that, it ends up being a kind of a stand-up matchup for large parts of it. So while I am picking Simon as my official play, I think the over is generally very, very good as well. And I would not be surprised if this turned out to be Mario's coming out party either. He is very good, and we just haven't seen him against the best yet. It should be an entertaining, high-level, scrappy one that could go either way. So for that reason, I'd actually say, yeah, take the over. Go over 2.5. Both very durable dudes. All right. All right, so we're at the feature fight of tonight's card. I've got a quick question actually for the chat before I get into this one. Do you think that Jim Miller is a Hall of Famer? Now, I know where I personally lie on this, but judging from some of the conversations that I've seen back and forth on Twitter on this guy in particular, it's one that definitely splits opinion. Personally, I think there's a lot more to being a Hall of Famer than just having championship wins and championship credentials. I think there are accolades in this sport that are overlooked, and Jim Miller is one of those guys. Anyway, in this fight, I'm going to be taking Jim Miller to win it. He's vastly more experienced. He's shown that he still has power in his hands. And I think when it comes down to it, if they're having a pretty even exchange, I think that Miller can then fall back on his jiu-jitsu and submission threat, just as another wrinkle that he can use. And I'm always in favor of picking a guy that simply has more avenues to get the job done. And he definitely has that. Now, Benitez is a pretty decent fighter, but he's been very underwhelming in his last few, and he looks like he's lost a step and doesn't have that same pop anymore. He's been up against pretty mediocre competition and has kind of traded wins and losses back and forth. Now, I can potentially see this going either to a decision for Miller, breaking him down, or maybe getting a late stoppage when he tires his opponent out. I do think this one is actually a little bit high on the card. I would have had the Simon fight above this one, but I do think Miller's name is carrying it a little bit, and it does indicate that they're potentially trying to set him up for placing him on the card at UFC 300 potentially. I think this will be fun, entertaining enough, and I'm just going to edge Miller to slightly get this done. All right, on to the co-main, and oh boy, I love this fight. So I've actually got a lot riding on this one, and I'm absolutely buzzing for it. Last year, for some reason, really endeared me to Manel Kape. I will never, ever get over this man for, allowing Israel Adesanya to make Manel Kape the guy that flyweight apparently needs. And we need this guy to win. He brings a level of excitement and trash talk to the game that is desperately missing at flyweight. And I think a win here could actually propel him into title contention. If he can smash Nicolau out, grab the mic, say some outrageous stuff, imagine the hype that could generate. And I could see him getting a shot off the back of it. Take my money as well. The guy is just funny. He's probably the only fighter at the weight class that will generate that excitement. Now, they did have a fight before that was pretty much razor close, and Nicolau managed to get out there with a split win, which in my opinion was the correct decision. Some people don't agree with it, but I did think he edged him out. At the time, Starboy had this really bad tendency to get into fights really, really slowly, and to also take too much time admiring his own work. I think he's learned from that mistake though, and he started to apply a lot more pressure now. His cardio's better, and I just think he's so elite in what he does that it's really, really hard to pick against him. I don't want you to get me wrong here. I think Nicolau is one of the most underrated guys in the division, and he does have a win over Kape. So him at plus 200 could actually be a very tempting dog to potentially line up. Flyweight is one of the best divisions, in my opinion, in terms of skill depth amongst the elite fighters. They can all strike well. They can all wrestle well. They've all got good ground games. I just think that Manel has the momentum now and the confidence now. I think he's got a bit more power, and I think he's going to edge this out one way or another. I can either see it going into a decision, a reasonably close one, or Manel maybe even catching him. Yeah, I think it's going to be a close one though. I think both men are going to have their moments, but I think we know in the UFC that Starboy is the one that's going to propel this division to new heights, and I'm picking him and I'm wishing it into existence. It's the one fight on the card where I genuinely feel like I've got a dog in this one. There's a lot of fighters I like up and down the card, but I really want Kape to win. It was my wish for the year. All right, so on to the main event of the evening. To be honest, I would have rather seen Nicolau and Kape as the main event, but whatever. Let's get a good shot of these two gentlemen in the screen together. All right, now this one is going to be a little bit controversial. One, because I think Ankalaev should have been disqualified in their last bout. I mean, he hit a knee to a grounded opponent and should have been disqualified for it. It was a fight ender. He's the one that ruined the fight. He should have got a loss on his record for it. On the other hand, I do think that Johnny Walker was on his way to losing that fight and pretty much used this as an excuse to quit in there. I think this is utterly ridiculous as well, that people are seeing this as a title eliminator. You could make the case on the side of Ankalaev, as much as I dislike the guy. But if Johnny Walker gets a title shot off the back of this, I'm literally lost for words. He's been flatlined so many times whenever he gets against good competition, and I just don't think he's good enough. I don't think it's going to matter anyway. Now, I don't like Ankalaev. I think he's a whiny little pussy. But at the same time, he does have a style that's really, really good for this division. And I think that Johnny Walker, unless he's somehow able to catch him flush with something wild, is too stupid in there, is going to make a costly mistake that's going to leave him on his back, and he's going to end up getting dominated on top. It was very telling to me that in interviews after the fight, that Walker he didn't really seem too keen to run this one back. And that's a really big red flag to me. And I'm pretty sure that he's being forced into taking this bout again. Now, he did unfairly get kneed in the head in the first fight, but I think he realized that he couldn't match up with him and then tried to get an escape route out of there. From what I saw in the first one, I have to favor the Russian. And given how the lines have swelled in his favor even further as the weeks progressed, it's pretty clear that Vegas and the betting public agree with these very sentiments. Another one you could say is that it's going to end within the distance. I don't see any way that it goes that long. And to be honest, as a main event, I'm just not keen on it. I think it's a really, really poor headliner. So again, right, here's an outline of all the fights. I've taken away the color coding this time because I'm going all in this year. I'm not making any excuses. If I make a pick, I make a pick. And I don't want to give any excuse for it to be like, oh, well, I told you it was a red flag. You know, I'm not doing any of that this year. These are the ones I'm picking. I'm going to have a degree of confidence of every pick I make now. I think I've earned the right to do that. So yeah, that's how I'm laying it down. These are a layout of the predictions. So that if you feel like having a little bet and want to have an overview, here they are. So, what did you think of these predictions? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do me a favor as well and drop your parlays or plays this. It's always nice to have those to reflect back on. Check out the pods on the channel as always. There's been a few really good ones lately, and I want more video dropping in the next 2 days. I've got a topic that I think everyone's going to really like. It's about a particular fighter. I'm not going to say who because I don't want anyone stealing my fantastic ideas. But yeah, I think you're going to really enjoy that one. And of course, I'm going to be breaking down and reacting to what happens on this fight card, as I always do every week. Once we get to 1,000 subs, I'm actually going to start doing a fight companion if that ever happens. So let me know if that's something you would actually be interested in seeing as well. Great to have the fights back. It's actually secretly a very, very good card with some very, very good matchups. And I think it's going to be a really fun one. Like and subscribe as always. Thanks for stopping by. And I'll see you in a couple of days for the next video. Have a great rest of the week. Take it easy. Peace.